Well, this week we have an opportunity to look at Proverbs 27:17. As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And to hear a story and to hear someone's story. And as we think about all the ways that God interacts with someone else, we can always see those moments in ways that God interacts with us. So today I have Pastor Jason and the opportunity to talk to him about his faith journey, where God has shown himself and blessed him in life and brought him to the point where he is right now. So first of all, thanks for agreeing to do this.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
All right, so I want to start at the ending. So you're sitting right here. You've been through lots of things, had lots of experiences in your life.
Sure.
When you think about where your faith is right now, what's your most tangible benefit from faith? So obviously, salvation in Jesus Christ for eternity.
Check.
Yes, but what day to day? What does faith do in your life?
Yeah, and you made a really good point that's changed throughout my life. I think for everybody that's watching this knows, relatively new parent, that brings with it all sorts of relationship challenges, different, well, in lots of ways, with my wife, with Levi. My faith has really been, I talk about faith a lot as the source of comfort, the source of kind of a peace that maybe isn't available in other places. And that's a thing that's been really tangible to me, that I've really had the chance to draw on as I've confronted very much a new phase of life.
What is that when you say like a certain peace? How do you experience that?
Yeah, I think the way that I think through it is things don't maybe ruffle me or get me upset in the way that it's hard to say. I've never really not been a Jesus follower, not been a believer, but as I look at other people around me who don't necessarily have that foundation that I have, I see them getting worked up, bothered about things that maybe just don't for me.
Cool. So thinking about that lesson, I want to back up now.
Sure.
Right. So you were born.
All the way back.
And then what? No. So you were born unique. You have a uniqueness to you.
That's true. Have a twin brother.
Born a twin. And you are which twin?
I'm the older twin by an hour and 3 minutes.
I meant the good twin or the bad twin.
Oh, well, that's the same thing.
Nice. So twin brother Ryan.
Yes.
All right. So you grew up in a household of faith with a twin brother, just the two of you.
Just the two.
Yeah. That was enough, right?
My parents always said they wanted two. They got two at the same time.
That's cool.
So,
but raised in a household of faith. Both parents kind of encouraged your walk.
Definitely did. I don't know where you want to go with this, but the earliest kind of faith conversation that I remember having was actually with my dad while I think he was unloading the dishwasher. He's loading or unloading the dishwasher. I have like a vague memory of it. And I kind of asked him, I don't know how we got on the topic, but I remember asking the question kind of like, why do you believe this? And his answer was one that really stuck with me, even at the time. I think I was 4 or 5 years old. And he said, if I believe in this stuff and I'm wrong, if it isn't true and I believe that it is, well then I don't have much to lose, right? If I believe that it's not true and it is, I have a lot to lose. So it was really kind of a playing the odds kind of answer. But as I've gotten older, like I said, that's really stuck with me. It makes a lot of sense in one way.
That's Blaise Pascal, right?
Is
Pascal's wager. Yeah, the mathematician.
Okay.
That's one of the things that he always said.
Yeah.
So again, kind of a cool phrase from your dad.
So all that to say, yeah, it's been part of my life, part of the family since I can remember.
So how did that show itself growing up?
I always tell the joke that kind of the unspoken rule in our house was, you can do whatever you want on Saturday night, but the car's going to leave at 8 o'clock Sunday morning. You're going to be in it. We were in the Wednesday programs. We were in the Sunday school, church before, and again, it was the unspoken rule in our house. We did family devotions and things like that off and on, but the way that showed itself was the consistency of church involvement. Whether it was, like I said, Wednesday evening programs, youth group. If it's happening, you're going to be there.
And you've said it wasn't always easy for you. You didn't always like the fact that you got in the car.
Well, it was fine for me. It wasn't always easy for the Sunday school teachers. Ryan, who you mentioned, told the joke in his wedding toast of the only pastor ever to have been kicked out of Sunday school.
So it's true?
It is true. Well, it's half true. He never mentions that he was kicked out as well.
But he's not a pastor.
He doesn't need to. It wasn't his wedding. He's not a pastor.
Yeah, nice. And so you grew up here in the Fishers area.
Yeah, grew up most of my childhood in Fishers, and we went to Holy Cross in Geist in Indianapolis.
So that's where you were kicked out of.
That's where I was kicked out of, yeah. And so there are a lot of people who looked at me and said, "Really, you?" When they found out I was going to be a pastor, really?
Okay, so that's a little bit of an embarrassing situation. But growing up, what's one thing about your childhood that you don't talk about a lot? Do you put a frog in a neighbor's pool? What's something that you did growing up?
Oh man. So that mindset, attitude, whatever you might say, that was in the Sunday school classroom carried over to all the other parts of my life. That we were always kind of it was really two against whoever. We were always kind of egging each other on to do crazy stuff like that. I remember one time, I can't remember why, but we got the neighbor kid to run laps around our yard as some sort of initiation or testing or something, and his parents showed up because he collapsed partway through the whatever.
Run so far.
Yeah. So we were always kind of that pair.
Nice. Nice. The things you do, right?
Yeah.
The prayer in the Bible, remember not the sins of my youth, kind of a thing.
There are definitely Cornerstone disciples who could tell all kinds of other stories about what that was.
Nice. So you get done with high school. You decide you're going to go to Hanover. How did you pick the college you picked? Why did you pick that?
Honestly, truthfully, because it had a nice picture in a magazine. So, as you said, grew up in Fishers, attended Hamilton Southeastern High School, very big even then, it's really big now, but very big even then. I think there were 700 and something in my graduating class alone, so I knew that I wanted to go to a small college. Knew that very early on. At some point I got a magazine with Indiana colleges in it, and Hanover had a really nice spread of the campus, and it's like a 600 and something acre campus, really wooded, right on the river, beautiful. And that was the thing that caught my eye. Small school, it was 900 or something at the time. So it checked that box, and it was beautiful. And that was honestly kind of all that went into it.
And you went to study what?
I went to study psychology. At the time, I thought I wanted to go to law school, and somebody told me psychology was a good major for law school. So that's what I did. At a certain point, I decided, and truthfully, if I knew then what I know now about what law is, I probably would have had a different decision. But somewhere along the line, decided I didn't want to do billable hours, for the rest of my life, and always had a ministry thing in the back of my mind for a long time. We can talk more about that if you want to. So somewhere along the line, decided law school wasn't for me. At the same time, had a friend who lived on my hall who was a theology major who encouraged me to pick that up. So I did that for a long time as a double major, with psychology, theology, double major.
And what was your spiritual life life like at that point?
Yeah, it was really interesting because I was not around Lutherans really for the first time I was a public school kid, but as far as my spiritual life, really the first time in my life that I wasn't around Lutherans. So I did find myself defending parts of my theology that never even occurred to me. Infant baptism, things that we really teach and believe and almost take for granted. The inerrancy of Scripture, stuff like that. The idea that Scripture is without fault. So I found myself, it was really kind of a split screen idea, defending kind of, again, things I took for granted. But at the same time, even though they weren't Lutheran, all of my friends, I was in Campus Crusade and a couple other Bible studies, actually met Lauren through a Bible study connection. And so it was, at the same time that it was that defending myself, it was I would say the most spiritual connection, spiritual saturation that I've had ever in my life.
So thinking through the points of childhood up through college there, who was most influential?
Yeah, a handful of people come to mind. There's a youth group director who I haven't talked to him in a while, but he said to me one thing again, that there's kind of moments or quotes in my life that really stick with me, right? As you may have guessed, I was the kid in youth group who always had a question, always had a what about, or try to stump the teacher. And so I would ask him, and again, I was kind of into law and politics and that kind of stuff. So I would ask him all these kind of like social issue questions. What about, why isn't the church believing or saying this? And he eventually said to me, when you really understand the grace of Jesus and what he did on the cross, you'll understand how to answer this question. And that it put me in my place, which I needed. But more and more, again, one of those things that kind of stuck with me, the idea that the grace of Jesus, the gift that he gives on the cross, is the kind of paradigm through which we want to look at all these other things, was really impactful for me.
And so it's really a seek first his kingdom and these other things to be added to you. That sense that if you get this right, the other things are easier to understand.
Yeah, in that sense, then the knowledge, the answer to the understanding will be added to you. Yeah. Absolutely.
All right, so now you're done with college.
Yeah.
You're not law. You're psychology, theology.
Yep.
And what's next?
So what's next was literally back to my parents' house. I did that thing. Because I graduated in 2010. 2008 was kind of the financial crisis. It was not a great opportunity, not a great moment to be graduating with from a liberal arts school with a theology degree. I had dropped the psych major because I knew I wasn't doing anything with it. So I graduated with a theology major, which is pretty not employable. I think these are true numbers. I applied for 42 jobs. I got 2 callbacks and 0 job offers. So closed door after closed door after closed door. In the meantime, I literally fell into a Spanish interpreting position, doing a lot of medical interpreting. And so what that meant, especially in that time, this was pre-Affordable Care Act, pre-Obamacare, and so a lot of emergency room work, because especially those who are Spanish speaking, didn't have insurance. They use emergency room as their primary care. When you show up to the emergency room with an earache, you go to the back of the line, which justifiable, you should. What that meant was that I would spend 4, 5, 6 hours with these families, just kind of waiting. And so, you can only, Law and Order is on every hour of the day, but you can only watch so much Law and Order. So eventually, I spent a lot of time just talking with families, and what I was hearing was, man, this is a really hard way to live. It's a really challenging lifestyle. We're really far from home. We're disconnected. There's a lot of kind of what we would say daily bread need in that story. There's also a lot of spiritual need in that story as well. Kind of underneath that, or resulting out of that, a lot of spiritual need. And I'll say that's the final piece of a thread that had actually threaded its way, as threads do, threaded its way through a large chunk of my life at that point. So starting from an experience I had even in my first year of college, where I was working in the local Hispanic community center. I was made to as part of a class project. I had to be there. And was thinking about that same thing. They do a lot of good stuff. They do English classes, food, clothing, all the things. Who's meeting the spiritual need? And the next thought that I had, this was, again, first year of college, 19 years old. Next thought I had sounded just like this. You could do that. 2 moments in my life when I'm pretty certain that the Spirit spoke to me. That's one of them. You could do that. So I pursued that. I did a summer internship in Mexico. Working on both sides of the border, El Paso and Juarez, Mexico. And I was working with short-term mission groups, but I was working, so they would come and go. But I was working with the same 5 churches, the same communities. So I was hearing a lot of those same stories. Without going into the details, low wages, high unemployment, a lot of drug-related death, really, really hopeless. And so in that summer, I started to ask myself, where does my hope come from? And that's the moment where all that stuff, all those times I was being kicked out of Sunday school, not paying attention, all that stuff, nevertheless, that message was in there. And so that's what I recognized is, where does my hope come from? It really comes from the idea that regardless of what's happening now, something more, something better is coming. And that's the message I started finding myself wanting to convey to these families I was talking to. Something more is coming, something better than this is available. So again, went back to school, drug my feet only a little bit longer. I have this thing where I have wanted to do ministry for a long time, but I've wanted to do it exactly my way. That's why all those 42 jobs, that's why all the things. So drug my feet for a long time trying to make a specific thing happen. It didn't happen. In the meantime, fell into that Spanish interpreting role and started having those same conversations, those same interactions again. And that's when finally I said, okay, I have to stop dragging my feet and just do this, which I did. And then 3 years later, I ended up in exactly 4 years later, in exactly the situation I was trying to engineer for myself. So as we talk about God showing himself or revealing himself in my life, that's a big one. You thought you had a plan and it had to be exactly this way. Just follow me, and I'm gonna do that exact thing for you.
Yeah. Okay, so through seminary to being a pastor, again, now you're in a position where, again, you're a pastor. You and Lauren are married.
Mm-hmm.
You've been married for 12 years.
12 years now. Yeah.
Yeah, 12 years. You have Levi. So lots of different things in life. What inspires you about faith today? What inspires you about sharing that hope with others today?
Yeah, I think what inspires me is it has been so important in my life, and like the way I would say it is it's so tangible. It's so close to the surface, you might say. As I look around, both friends I have, kind of personal relationships, looking in the world at large, there's so much need for it. There's so many people looking for what is for us so close and so tangible. And I've seen this in both my own life, but so many people that I've walked with, where they like, it's like the light comes on, right? They closer and closer and closer. Now they have this relationship with Jesus, and it's like their life changes. And that sounds cliche, but it's not.
Right.
And that's what inspires me. Is like I don't know even how to quite put it into words, but the idea that everybody's looking for this, and it's this close.
Mm-hmm.
It's here. It's for you.
Nice. So, favorite Bible verse?
Well, so that again changes from throughout life.
Sure.
A couple that come to mind. One that's been really important to me. I don't know if you have this experience. I sometimes find verses in my Bible that hadn't been there before. I found one in.
Right, you've read the whole Bible,
Yep.
but this one just appeared.
Where was this all these times? So Exodus 4, I think it's verse 12. It says, it's so just to set up context, and it actually mirrors my life a little bit as I talk through this story. God has come to Moses, and he says to Moses, you need to go and rescue my people. And Moses says, not me. And God says, yeah, you. And then he says, well, what about this way? No, go. And they go back and forth, and it says, it actually interestingly says God was angry at Moses. But in the midst of that, it finally says, now go, and I will teach you what to say. And again, those words, I just love those words. I really want to put it above the door as we leave the house every day. Now go, and I will teach you what to say. The idea that we're any of us, right? As we go, we're going among people who are looking, who are searching, and this idea that God says, I'm with you in it.
That's cool. That's good. All right. So a couple of quick hitter questions.
All right.
So who's a celebrity, a famous person, an athlete, or whatever, who you say that's my worldly hero?
I'm gonna do a home team. So Andrew Luck has always been really cool to me because he was an amazing football player, but it was never his life. He knew, he walked away too early, but he knew when to walk away and how to let go of it and how to do other significant things in his life.
I thought you were going to say the beard.
I like the beard is cool too.
What's your favorite book or movie?
Yeah, I'm really more of a TV series guy. I'm a big Office fan. As far as book, To Kill a Mockingbird has always been a fun one for me.
Nice. So you've lived in several different places. You were in Mexico, obviously St. Louis, obviously here in Indiana a couple times.
Brooklyn for a minute, yeah.
New York for 5 years. So in all those moves, what's one really cool, like local flavor kind of place? Like if you were to tell somebody, somebody were to say, it may not be this one, but somebody were to say, I'm going to Brooklyn. Where should I go to? Or you'd say you've got to go to this. Of all those places, pick one place in any one of them.
So there's Williamsburg was my neighborhood. There's a Korean wing spot. I don't know how they do the wings. They deep fry them or something, but they're crispy and they're just salty enough. It was one of those places where we could walk there, walk back, if you get out of the car. And it's like one of those things, I don't know if there are foods that you wake up thinking about. These wings are the one that I wake up thinking about sometimes.
That's cool. So your best guess as to the record for the Colts this year?
Middling.
Middling.
Yeah. What is it? 17 game now. So I guess
17
we'll go 9-8.
All right, 9-8. All right. When you think about all of the advice that you've received, spiritual advice, what's the best piece of spiritual advice that you would receive that you would pass on?
Yeah. So one that comes to mind comes from my vicarage supervisor. So that's pastoral intern. We have a Vicar Logan right now. When I was doing my vicarage, one of my supervisors said to me, "Don't be a jerk." What he meant by that is, and it's been so true in my life and my ministry, you can get a long way just by being a nice, open, welcoming person.
As much as it relies on you,
Live at peace with everyone. That's probably what he meant to say.
That's the biblical way to say it. Maybe but it helps us to understand it. So, well, as you've answered some of these questions, again, it gives us some time to reflect for ourselves, to know whatever season or station we're in, that same truth that Pastor Jason spoke about is true for us, of seeking first the kingdom of God, of seeking God and seeking what He is doing in us, and trusting that we can have confidence because He knows what He's doing and the ways that He will continue to work in us, trusting the promise that He'll never leave us or forsake us, even if we get kicked out of Sunday school.
That was my confirmation verse. Maybe that's why.
That's a wonderful lesson for us, and hopefully as you think about this, again, the iron sharpening iron, it gives you some chance to reflect on your own faith and the way that God is at work in you, and knowing that every season comes with mixed things that we will experience, some good, some not so good, and yet God remains faithful, trusting that His love always is with us. We have the confidence of knowing we're His children and that He will never abandon us. So again, thanks for sharing, for answering some of those questions.
Had fun.
And I pray that God will bless you as you go forward, thinking about others who sharpen you and ways that you can sharpen others in the faith in Jesus.